We often believe that being available all the time makes us important. We reply instantly, agree to every request, show up even when we are exhausted, and stretch ourselves thin just to prove our worth. Slowly, without realizing it, we confuse being needed with being valued. But the truth is, constant availability does not increase respect. It often reduces it. When something is always available, we stop appreciating it. Think about air. We need it every moment, yet we rarely feel grateful for it. Compare that to water in a desert. Scarcity creates value, not excess. In the same way, when you are always present, always saying yes, always adjusting, people may start taking you for granted. Being valuable is not about disappearing or becoming cold. It is about being intentional. It is about knowing when to give and when to pause. When you respect your time, energy, and boundaries, others learn to respect them too. Value is created when your presence adds meaning, not when it becomes predictable. Many people fear saying no because they are afraid of losing relationships. But relationships built on overavailability are fragile. They depend on convenience, not connection. Real relationships survive boundaries. In fact, boundaries make them healthier. When you stop being available for everything, you become available for what truly matters. Your time is your life. Your time is your life. Every unnecessary yes is a silent no to yourself. When you invest your energy wisely, your words carry more weight. Your presence feels richer and your absence is noticed. That is not ego. That is self-respect. Remember, the sun is not available at night, yet its value never decreases. The moon does not shine all day, yet people wait for it. Value comes from purpose, not from constant presence. So don't measure your worth by how many people need you. Measure it by how aligned you are with your values, your growth, and your peace. When you choose value over availability, you don't lose people. You lose exploitation. And what remains is respect taught when you are available all the time. People slowly stop seeing your presence as something special. At first, they appreciate it. They notice your quick replies, your willingness to help, your habit of always being there. But over time, that appreciation quietly fades and turns into expectation. What was once valued becomes assumed. This is how familiarity replaces respect. And respect is what gives relationships depth and meaning. Human psychology works in a very simple way. We value what feels limited and meaningful. And we overlook what feels constant and guaranteed. When someone knows you will always pick up the call, always adjust your schedule, always say yes, they no longer pause to consider your effort. Your availability becomes a background feature of their life, not a gift. Without realizing it, they stop treating your time as important because you never treated it as rare. This does not happen because people are bad or ungrateful. It happens because the mind adapts quickly. When something is repeatedly accessible without effort, the brain stops assigning value to it. Just like a song played on repeat eventually loses its charm, constant presence loses its emotional weight. Your kindness, your support, your attention, these are powerful when offered with care, but weaken when offered without limits. Respect grows when people know there is a cost to accessing you. Not a financial cost, but an emotional, energetic one. When you choose when to show up instead of showing up everywhere, people sense that your presence is intentional. They listen more carefully when you speak, appreciate you more when you help, and think twice before taking you for granted. Respect is born from awareness, and awareness comes when availability is not endless. Many people confuse respect with being liked. They believe that if they are always there, people will value them more. In reality, people may like the convenience, not the person. Convenience disappears the moment you stop serving their needs, but respect remains even when you are not around. If someone only values you when you are useful, that connection is built on dependency, not dignity. When you start protecting your time, something interesting happens. At first, people may resist. They may question why you are less available, why you have changed. But slowly they adjust. They begin to plan better, communicate more clearly, and appreciate you more deeply. Your absence creates space for reflection, and reflection creates respect. Being selective does not mean being selfish. It means understanding that your energy is limited and valuable. When you give it wisely, it retains its power. When you give it endlessly, it loses impact. Respect is not demanded. It is cultivated through the way you treat yourself. When you stop being everywhere, you allow your presence to matter somewhere. And when your presence matters, familiarity no longer weakens it. Instead, it strengthens the bond because it is rooted in choice, not habit. Value is not created by how often you are present, but by how consciously you choose to be present. When availability comes automatic, it loses meaning. Intention, on the other hand, adds depth to even the smallest actions. A short, thoughtful presence can leave a stronger impression than constant, distracted availability. This is why true value is built through intention and boundaries, not through endless accessibility. Many people believe that being always reachable proves commitment and care. They keep their phones close, respond immediately, and rearrange their priorities to accommodate others. At first, this seems generous and kind. But over time, this behavior sends a subtle message. Your time has no structure, your energy has no limit, and your presence requires no respect. Without boundaries, even the most sincere intentions lose their impact. Boundaries are often misunderstood. They are not walls meant to keep people out, but lines that protect what matters most. When you set boundaries, you are not rejecting others, you are honoring yourself. You are deciding where your energy flows and where it must be preserved. This self-awareness is what transforms ordinary availability into meaningful contribution. When people know you are not always accessible, they recognize that your presence is a choice, not an obligation. Intention changes the quality of interactions. When you choose to be present, you listen more deeply, speak more thoughtfully, and engage more fully. Your attention is not divided, and your words carry sincerity. People can sense this. They feel when someone is there out of genuine care rather than habit. That feeling creates trust, and trust is the foundation of value. Without boundaries, intention slowly fades. You begin to show up out of routine rather than purpose. You say yes even when you are tired, distracted, or resentful. In these moments, your presence may be physical, but your mind is elsewhere. Over time, this creates inner exhaustion and outer disconnection. Others may see you often, yet feel you less. Presence without intention becomes noise, not value. When you introduce boundaries, clarity follows. People understand when and how to approach you. Conversations become more focused, requests more thoughtful, and relationships more balanced. You are no longer reacting to every demand. You are responding with awareness. This shift restores dignity to your time and meaning to your actions. Being intentional also teaches others how to treat you. When you respect your own limits, people learn to respect them too. They begin to appreciate the moments you are available because they know those moments are deliberate. Value grows not from frequency but from depth. A single meaningful interaction can outweigh countless shallow ones. In a world that celebrates constant connection, choosing intention over accessibility is an act of wisdom. It reminds you that your energy is finite and precious. When guided by boundaries, intention transforms presence into value and availability into purpose. Every time you say yes without thinking, you teach people something about your time. You may believe you are being helpful, kind, or supportive, but the message that often goes out silently is that your time is endlessly available and easily given away. Over time, this repeated behavior shapes how others perceive your worth, not because they intend to disrespect you, but because you never showed them that your time has value. A yes has weight only when it can also be a no. If yes is your default response, it stops being meaningful. People stop hearing it as a choice and start hearing it as a guarantee. When someone knows you will always agree, they no longer pause to consider whether their request is reasonable or respectful. Your agreement becomes assumed, and assumption slowly erodes appreciation. Many people struggle with saying no because they fear disappointing others. They worry that refusal will create distance or conflict. But what often happens is the opposite. By constantly saying yes, you build quiet resentment within yourself. You stretch your energy, sacrifice your priorities, and ignore your own needs. This internal imbalance eventually affects your tone, patience, and presence. Others may not know why, but they sense the shift. The relationship suffers even though you never said no. When you say yes to everything, you also say no to something else, usually yourself. You say no to rest, focus, growth, or peace. These invisible no's accumulate. Over time, they leave you feeling drained and undervalued. Ironically, the more you give, the less fulfilled you feel. This is because giving without choice is not generosity, it is self-neglect. Teaching others the cost of your time does not require harsh words or dramatic refusals. It begins with thoughtful pauses. Instead of immediate agreement, you consider your capacity. You respond honestly. This small shift communicates that your time is structured and meaningful. People begin to recognize that access to you is not automatic. It is granted with care. When you start choosing your yes wisely, people notice the difference. They approach you with clearer intentions. They respect your schedule more. They appreciate your help when you offer it. Your yes regains its power because it now represents commitment, not compulsion. It signals that you are present by choice, not by pressure. There is also a deep sense of self-respect that comes from honoring your limits. Each intentional yes reinforces the belief that your life matters to you. This inner alignment changes how you show up in the world. You become calmer, more focused, and more authentic. Others respond to this energy with greater respect, even if they cannot explain why. Learning to say no is not about rejection, it is about clarity. It clarifies your priorities, your values, and your capacity. When your yes is no longer free and unlimited, it becomes valuable. And when your time is treated as valuable, you are treated the same way. Value naturally rises when something is not endlessly available. This is not a strategy. It is a fundamental truth of human behavior. When access is limited, attention sharpens and appreciation deepens. The same principle applies to human presence. When your time and energy are always open to everyone, they lose their sense of importance. But when your availability has limits, your presence begins to carry meaning. Scarcity does not mean absence. It means selectiveness. It means choosing where your energy goes instead of letting it be pulled in every direction. When people know they cannot access you at any moment, they begin to value the moments they do have with you. Conversations become more focused, interactions more sincere, and relationships more intentional. Your presence stops being routine and starts becoming memorable. Constant availability creates predictability. Predictability often leads to carelessness. When someone knows you will always be there, they may postpone responding, show up unprepared, or treat your time casually. Not because they disrespect you consciously, but because the situation does not require effort. Scarcity introduces effort, and effort increases value. When people have to wait, plan, or adjust, they naturally become more mindful. This is why things that are rare are cherished. Not because they are perfect, but because they are not always within reach. In human relationships, limited access creates emotional awareness. People reflect more, communicate better, and appreciate deeper. When you are not constantly available, your absence creates space. In that space, people recognize your importance. Many people fear scarcity because they confuse it with rejection. They worry that being less available will push others away. In reality, healthy scarcity filters relationships. Those who only valued convenience may drift, but those who value connection stay. Scarcity does not destroy meaningful bonds. It strengthens them by removing dependency and replacing it with respect. When you intentionally limit your availability, you also protect your energy. You are no longer exhausted by constant demands. You show up refreshed, attentive, and present. This quality of presence is felt immediately. People sense when you are giving from fullness rather than depletion. That fullness becomes part of your value. Scarcity also encourages growth for you and others. When you are not always there to solve problems, others learn to rely on themselves. This builds mutual respect instead of silent dependence. You are no longer seen as a resource to be used, but as a person to be appreciated. Creating scarcity is not about manipulation. It is about self-respect. It is about understanding that your time, attention, and emotional energy are limited resources. When you treat them as precious, others follow your example. Value does not come from being everywhere. It comes from being meaningful where you are. When your presence is limited but intentional, it carries weight. People listen more, appreciate more, and remember. Scarcity transforms ordinary availability into lasting value. Boundaries are often misunderstood as barriers that create distance, but in reality, they are foundations that create balance. When boundaries are missing, relationships may appear close on the surface, yet underneath, they are strained by resentment, exhaustion, and unspoken expectations. It is not boundaries that harm relationships. It is the absence of them that slowly damages both connection and self-respect. When you do not set boundaries, you silently teach others how to treat you. You allow interruptions at any time, accept emotional burdens that are not yours to carry, and stretch yourself to meet demands that exceed your capacity. At first, this may feel generous. Over time, however, it becomes draining. You begin to feel overlooked, undervalued, or taken for granted. The relationship continues, but your sense of dignity weakens. Self-respect is built through consistency between what you feel and how you act. When you ignore your limits to please others, you create an inner conflict. You may smile outwardly while feeling discomfort inside. This inner mismatch erodes confidence and peace. Gradually, you lose trust in yourself because you keep crossing your own boundaries. No relationship can compensate for that loss. Healthy boundaries bring clarity. They communicate what is acceptable and what is not without hostility or guilt. When expressed calmly, boundaries actually make relationships safer. People know where they stand. They do not have to guess or test limits. This clarity reduces conflict and builds mutual understanding. Respect grows because interactions are based on honesty rather than silent endurance. Without boundaries, relationships often become imbalanced. One person gives more, adjusts more, and sacrifices more, while the other becomes accustomed to receiving. This imbalance creates dependency rather than connection. Over time, the giver feels drained and the receiver remains unaware. Boundaries correct this imbalance by restoring equality. They allow both sides to participate responsibly. Many people fear that setting boundaries will lead to rejection. But relationships that collapse under boundaries were not sustained by respect in the first place. They were sustained by convenience. True relationships may feel challenged at first, but they adapt. They evolve into something healthier because both individuals are allowed to exist fully without one disappearing for the other. Boundaries also protect emotional energy. When you say no to what drains you, you say yes to what nourishes you. This selective engagement improves the quality of your presence. You are no longer exhausted or resentful. You show up more patiently, more attentively, and more authentically. Others respond positively to this grounded energy. Ultimately, boundaries are an expression of self-worth. They say without words that your time, energy, and well-being matter. When you honor yourself, you invite others to do the same. Relationships rooted in boundaries are not weaker. They are stronger, more respectful, and more sustainable. Not every relationship is meant to last in the same way. And this truth becomes clear when you stop being constantly available. When your presence is reduced, the nature of your connections is revealed. Strong, genuine relationships do not depend on constant access. They are rooted in understanding, trust, and mutual respect. Weak connections, however, rely heavily on convenience. And when that convenience disappears, so do they. When you are always available, people rarely reflect on your importance. Your presence blends into their routine. But when you step back, even slightly, it creates space. In that space, real relationships deepen while shallow ones fade. Those who truly value you continue to reach out, adjust, and remain connected. Those who are attached only to your availability slowly drift away. This is not loss, it is clarity. Absence is often misunderstood as neglect. In reality, healthy absence allows growth. It gives relationships room to breathe. It reminds both people that connection is a choice, not an obligation. When someone values you, they do not need constant reassurance. They respect your space and trust the bond. Their connection to you is emotional, not transactional. Relationships that depend on constant availability are fragile because they are built on need rather than appreciation. The moment you are unable to show up, these connections feel threatened. Guilt is often used to pull you back in. But guilt is not a sign of love. It is a sign of dependence. When a relationship only functions when one person overextends, it is unbalanced. True relationships survive distance because they are based on shared values and mutual care. Time apart does not weaken them. It often strengthens them. It allows both individuals to grow independently and bring that growth back into the connection. When you reunite, conversations are richer, presence is deeper, and appreciation is stronger. When you stop being constantly available, you also give others the opportunity to step up. They learn to take responsibility, communicate clearly, and respect your time. This shift transforms relationships from one-sided effort into mutual participation. You are no longer the only one holding the connection together. There is also an internal shift that happens. You stop measuring your worth by how needed you are. You begin to value yourself beyond utility. This inner confidence changes how you engage with others. You are no longer afraid of losing people by choosing yourself. And this fearlessness creates healthier connections. Losing relationships that only thrived on your availability is not a failure. It is a form of protection. What remains are relationships that see you as a person, not a resource. These are the connections that endure because they are built on respect, not reliance. When you give endlessly without protecting your energy, you eventually stop giving your best. What you offer becomes leftovers. Whatever remains after exhaustion, stress, and emotional fatigue have taken their share. This is why protecting your energy is not selfish. It is essential. Only when your inner reserves are cared for can you show up fully and meaningfully for others. Energy is subtle, but its effects are powerful. People may not notice when you are tired, but they feel it. Your tone changes, your patience shortens, and your presence becomes thinner. You may still be physically there, but emotionally you are drained. Over time, this creates a gap between intention and impact. You want to support, but you no longer have the strength to do it well. Many people believe that constant giving is a sign of strength. In reality, unprotected, giving often leads to burnout. For when you ignore your need for rest, reflection, and solitude, you slowly disconnect from yourself. This disconnection shows up as irritability, numbness, or quiet resentment. You continue to help but without joy. And help offered without joy carries less value. Protecting your energy begins with awareness. You start noticing which interactions energize you and which ones deplete you. This awareness allows you to make conscious choices. You begin to engage where you contribute meaningfully and step back where you cannot. This selectiveness does not reduce your kindness, it refines it. When you protect your energy, the quality of presence improves. You listen more attentively, respond more thoughtfully, and act more patiently. People sense the difference. They feel seen and heard, not rushed or burdened. Your presence becomes grounding rather than draining, both for you and for them. There is also a deep respect that develops when you honor your energy. You send a clear message that your well-being matters. This encourages others to respect your limits as well. When you show up from a place of fullness, your contributions carry weight. They are not hurried or forced. They are intentional and sincere. Giving your best requires space to rest, to reflect, and to renew. Without this space, even the most generous heart becomes tired. Protecting your energy ensures that when you do give, it is from strength, not sacrifice. It allows you to remain consistent rather than sporadic, present rather than resentful. When you stop pouring from an empty place, your presence transforms. It becomes something people look forward to rather than something taken for granted. By protecting your energy, you do not give less, you give better. When you stop trying to please everyone and begin prioritizing yourself, something subtle yet powerful changes in the way you are perceived. Your actions slow down, your words become measured, and your presence gains depth. This shift is not loud or dramatic, but it is noticeable. People begin to listen more closely because your energy no longer feels scattered. When you prioritize yourself, your presence naturally carries more weight. Prioritizing yourself does not mean ignoring others. It means you are no longer driven by urgency or fear of disapproval. When you act from a centered place, you respond rather than react. Your decisions are clearer and your behavior is more consistent. This consistency builds credibility. People trust those who are grounded because their actions are not influenced by external pressure. When you are constantly trying to meet expectations, your actions lose impact. You may do many things, but none of them feel intentional. Others sense this and often overlook your efforts. However, when you choose yourself first, your actions become deliberate. Each word you speak and each commitment you make is backed by alignment. That alignment gives your actions authority. There is also a change in how you communicate. You no longer over-explain or seek validation. You speak with calm confidence, not because you are trying to impress, but because you are clear within yourself. This clarity makes your words stronger. Even silence becomes meaningful when it comes from self-assurance rather than uncertainty. People often associate loudness with influence, but true influence comes from presence. When you are centered, you do not need to dominate conversation. Your words land because they are well-timed and thoughtful. Others feel this and respond with respect. They may not always agree, but they pay attention. Prioritizing yourself also reduces emotional noise. You are less reactive, less defensive, and less anxious about how you are perceived. This emotional stability is rare, and rarity creates value. When others see that you are not easily shaken, they feel safer around you. Your calm becomes a reference point. This inner alignment also affects how you show up during challenges. You are not rushed to fix or prove anything. You take time to observe, understand, and then act. This approach builds trust and respect. People rely on those who are steady, not those who are constantly available but internally unsettled. When you prioritize yourself, you teach others how to engage with you. You set a tone of respect without demanding it. Your presence becomes intentional, and your actions carry meaning. This is how weight is added to what you do, not through effort alone, but through alignment with yourself. Being present with purpose is very different from being present out of habit. When you show up because you feel obligated, your actions lose their meaning. But when you show up with intention, every moment carries value. Being valuable is not about how often you are there. It is about why you are there and what you bring into that space. Purpose gives direction to your presence. It aligns your actions with your values. When you act with purpose, you are clear about what matters to you and why you are investing your time and energy. This clarity is felt by others. They sense that your involvement is thoughtful, not automatic. Your presence becomes something that adds depth rather than just filling space. When people act out of obligation, resentment quietly builds. You may do what is expected, but inside you feel drained or disconnected. Over time, this internal resistance shows up in subtle ways: less patience, less enthusiasm, less care. Others may not know the reason, but they feel the difference. Obligation-driven presence lacks warmth and authenticity. Purpose-driven presence, on the other hand, is grounded and sincere. You choose to be there because it aligns with who you are and what you value. This choice creates inner peace. You are not torn between wanting to leave and feeling forced to stay. Your energy flows naturally, making your presence more impactful. When you show up with purpose, you also become more selective. You stop spreading yourself thin across too many commitments. Instead, you focus on fewer things that truly matter. This focus increases quality. Conversations become richer, contributions become more thoughtful, and relationships become more meaningful. People begin to associate you with substance rather than availability. Purpose also protects your boundaries. When you know why you are doing something, it becomes easier to say no to what does not align. You are no longer guided by guilt or pressure. This clarity strengthens your sense of self-respect. You are not constantly negotiating your values to please others. Others respond differently to purposeful presence. They listen more attentively and engage more deeply. They know that when you are involved, it matters. Your words carry weight because they are not spoken casually. Your actions leave an impression because they are intentional. Living with purpose transforms how you relate to time. You stop rushing from one obligation to another. Instead, you create space for meaningful engagement. This slower, more conscious approach brings calm and focus into your life. And that calm itself becomes a source of value. When you choose purpose over obligation, you stop being everywhere and start being impactful. Your presence becomes a gift, not a habit. And in that shift, true value is created. Choosing self-respect over people-pleasing is one of the most important lessons in creating value in your life. Many of us spend years trying to be liked, accepted, or approved by everyone around us. We say yes to requests we do not want to fulfill, compromise our boundaries, and suppress our own needs just to avoid conflict or rejection. Over time, this constant people-pleasing erodes self-esteem, drains energy, and reduces the impact of our presence. True respect, both from ourselves and others, comes when we prioritize our values over endless approval. People often confuse being agreeable with being valuable. They think that if they never say no, if they are always available, and if they never assert themselves, they will be appreciated more. In reality, the opposite happens. Over-availability and automatic compliance often lead to being taken for granted. People begin to assume that your support, time, and energy are unlimited, which diminishes the weight of your presence. When you stop being available at every demand, people notice. They begin to recognize that your time and energy have worth. Self-respect means knowing your limits and standing by them without guilt. It means understanding that your priorities, your peace, and your growth matter. When you assert yourself in alignment with your values, you demonstrate integrity. Others sense it immediately. Your actions and words carry weight because they are guided by principles, not by the fear of judgment. This authenticity naturally commands respect and admiration. Saying no is a powerful tool in building respect. It communicates boundaries without hostility. It shows that you are intentional about where your energy goes. When you consistently honor your own needs, others learn to do the same. Respect is rarely demanded. It is cultivated by demonstrating that you value yourself. People may initially resist or be surprised, but genuine respect only grows over time. Choosing self-respect over people-pleasing also frees you from emotional exhaustion. When you constantly try to meet everyone's expectations, you lose touch with your own needs. Resentment quietly builds. You give but without joy. Your presence becomes heavy rather than uplifting. By prioritizing yourself, you give in a way that is balanced, conscious, and sustainable. Your energy becomes a source of strength rather than a burden. Another important aspect is that self-respect creates clarity in relationships. When you are clear about your values and limits, people understand where they stand. This clarity reduces misunderstandings and passive tension. Relationships that survive your assertion of self-respect are stronger because they are based on mutual understanding and authentic connection, rather than convenience or habit. Prioritizing self-respect does not mean isolating yourself or becoming selfish. It means acting with intention. It means saying yes when it aligns with your values and no when it does not. Over time, this approach builds a reputation of integrity and reliability. People begin to trust not just your presence, but your judgment and consistency. Finally, self-respect is the foundation for long-term impact. A long-term impact. People remember those who stood by their principles, not those who were always available or agreeable. When you value yourself, others naturally value you too. Approval is temporary, but respect and admiration endure. Choosing self-respect over people-pleasing transforms your presence from ordinary to invaluable, leaving a lasting impression on every interaction you engage in. When you choose to focus on value rather than availability, you begin to understand that people are drawn not to how often you are present, but to the depth of your presence. Being everywhere and responding to everything may seem impressive, but it rarely leaves a lasting impression. What truly matters is the quality of your engagement, the sincerity of your actions, and the intentionality behind your decisions. When you focus on being valuable, every interaction carries significance, and people begin to recognize and appreciate your contributions in a deeper way. Being valuable requires self-awareness. It begins with understanding your strengths, your priorities, and your limits. You cannot consistently provide value if you are unclear about who you are or what you stand for. Self-awareness allows you to act intentionally rather than reactively. It gives direction to your time, energy, and efforts, ensuring that what you give has purpose and impact. People naturally gravitate toward individuals who act with clarity and intention because they exude confidence and authenticity. Another important aspect of being valuable is consistency. It is not about being present for every request or obligation, but about being reliably impactful when you do show up. Your words, actions, and decisions are aligned, creating a sense of trust and credibility. People learn that when you are involved, it counts. This reliability becomes your signature, making your presence meaningful, even when it is not constant. Value also grows from your willingness to prioritize substance over superficiality. When you contribute thoughtfully, listen attentively, and engage deeply, you leave an impression that availability alone cannot achieve. A single meaningful conversation can have more impact than dozens of distracted interactions. People sense effort, intention, and sincerity, and that is what creates lasting respect and appreciation. Boundaries play a critical role in enhancing your value. When you protect your time and energy, you prevent depletion and ensure that what you offer is your best. Boundaries are not barriers. They are frameworks that allow you to show up fully and intentionally. They communicate to others that your presence is precious and that you do not give it lightly. In turn, this encourages people to approach you with thoughtfulness and respect. Being valuable also means being selective with where you invest your energy. Not every request or expectation deserves your attention. By discerning where your efforts will make the most meaningful impact, you increase the effectiveness of your contributions. This selectiveness ensures that your engagement is not diluted, making it more impactful when it occurs. People learn to appreciate and respect the moments when you choose to be present because those moments carry weight. Another aspect of value is emotional presence. It is not enough to physically be there. Your focus, empathy, and attention must also be fully engaged. When people feel that you are truly listening, that your energy is invested in understanding and supporting them, your presence becomes transformative. Emotional presence creates trust, strengthens connections, and makes your contribution memorable. Value is amplified by growth and self-improvement. People are drawn to those who continually evolve, learn, and improve. When you invest in yourself, your experiences, skills, and wisdom grow, making you more capable of meaningful contributions. Your growth increases the quality of your presence, not just the quantity, and this makes people value your time and insight more. Finally, being valuable requires patience and restraint. You do not rush to say yes, nor do you scatter your energy across every demand. You wait, observe, and act with purpose. This patience allows your presence to be intentional, measured, and impactful. People begin to notice that your involvement is deliberate, and that deliberate presence naturally carries weight. When you focus on being valuable rather than available, your life transforms. Relationships become deeper, respect becomes mutual, and your contributions leave a lasting mark. You are no longer someone who is always seen but seldom remembered. Instead, you become someone whose presence matters, whose words carry meaning, and whose actions inspire trust and admiration. Value is not measured by how often you show up. It is measured by how much your presence matters when you do. When you prioritize self-respect and value over constant availability, you begin to teach others how to engage with you. People learn from your actions more than your words. They notice how you protect your time, honor your boundaries, and invest your energy selectively. This modeling is subtle but powerful. Over time, it reshapes the dynamics of your relationships, creating interactions based on respect rather than habit, and appreciation rather than expectation. When you demonstrate that your presence is intentional, people adjust how they approach you. They begin to recognize that access to your time and energy is a privilege, not a given. This does not mean you become unkind or distant. On the contrary, it allows you to be fully present when you choose to engage, making those moments richer and more meaningful. Your focus and attention are no longer scattered across endless demands. They are concentrated where they matter most. One of the most important lessons in teaching others how to engage with you is that boundaries are not barriers. They are statements of value. When you consistently enforce your limits, others internalize that your energy is finite. They learn to respect your schedule, your priorities, and your emotional bandwidth. Over time, interactions become more thoughtful and deliberate, rather than careless and automatic. People begin to approach you with intentionality, rather than assumption. This dynamic also reduces unnecessary stress and emotional strain. Constant availability often results in people relying on you for everything, draining your energy while diminishing the quality of your contributions. By demonstrating selective engagement, encourage others to take responsibility for their own needs. This fosters healthier, more balanced relationships. Those who respect your boundaries do so because they understand that your energy is valuable, not because you demanded their respect. Being selective also enhances your influence. When people recognize that your involvement is not automatic, they begin to see your participation as significant. Your opinions, insights, and actions are no longer background noise, they carry weight. People pay attention because your engagement is intentional, not habitual. This is how presence becomes power, not through quantity but through quality. Teaching others how to engage with you also encourages reciprocity. When your relationships are guided by mutual respect and mindful engagement, people mirror the care and consideration you model. They become more aware of how their actions affect you and begin to approach interactions with greater thoughtfulness. This creates a cycle of respect where both sides honor each other's time, energy, and boundaries. Furthermore, when you prioritize value over availability, you gain clarity about the relationships that truly matter. Not everyone will adjust to your boundaries, and that is acceptable. Those who are only accustomed to convenience may drift away. But the relationships that survive your intentional presence are stronger and more genuine. Scarcity acts as a filter, removing dependence and leaving connections that are rooted in mutual respect and understanding. Teaching others how to engage with you also transforms your own self-perception. You start seeing yourself as worthy of respect and consideration. You internalize the idea that your time, attention, and energy are precious resources, not commodities to be given away freely. This self-awareness strengthens your confidence, reinforces your boundaries, and allows you to show up authentically in every interaction. Ultimately, when you teach people how to engage with you, you create a dynamic where your presence matters deeply. Interactions become more meaningful, respect becomes mutual, and your life is no longer defined by constant demand but by intentional, impactful engagement. People remember those who are present with purpose, and your selective presence ensures that when you show up, you leave a lasting impression. By modeling self-respect, intentionality, and thoughtful engagement, you shift the energy in your relationships from expectation to appreciation, from habit to value. This is the essence of being valuable rather than merely available. And it transforms not just how others treat you, but how you experience your own life. When you consistently choose value over availability, you naturally cultivate a sense of long-term impact in everything you do. True influence is not measured by how often you are present or how quickly you respond. It is measured by the lasting impression you leave and the meaningful change your presence creates. People remember the moments when your actions mattered, when your guidance helped, or when your words inspired, far more than they remember the countless occasions when you were merely present without purpose. This distinction is what separates those who are simply available from those who are truly valuable. Creating long-term impact begins with intentionality. Every action, every conversation, and every decision you make should align with your core values and your sense of purpose. Being busy is not the same as being impactful. You can be available to everyone yet contribute little of significance. But when your choices are guided by principle, your presence resonates. People sense that your involvement is deliberate, and this intentionality gives your contributions weight and meaning. Another critical factor is consistency. Long-term impact is not built through occasional bursts of attention or effort. It is developed through sustained purposeful engagement. When people can rely on your integrity, follow-through, and commitment, your influence grows steadily over time. This reliability builds trust, and trust is the foundation of any enduring impact. People remember those whose actions align with their words consistently because it reflects authenticity and dedication. The quality of your engagement also amplifies your influence. Being physically present is not enough. Emotional and intellectual presence is essential. When you actively listen, empathize, and contribute thoughtfully, your involvement is transformative rather than transactional. People notice when you give your full attention rather than half-hearted effort. This kind of presence becomes memorable because it leaves an impression that is difficult to ignore. Boundaries and selectivity play a crucial role in creating long-term impact. When you limit your availability to what aligns with your priorities, your presence becomes rare and meaningful. Scarcity adds weight. When people know that your time is not unlimited, they approach you with consideration, and your contributions are appreciated more. Your absence is no longer unnoticed. It highlights the value of your presence when you choose to engage. Investing in your growth also contributes to lasting influence. People are naturally drawn to those who evolve, learn, and expand their knowledge or skills. When you continually work on yourself, your ability to make a meaningful impact increases. Your insights, guidance, and presence become more valuable because they are informed by experience, reflection, and growth. Others see this and are inspired, which multiplies your long-term effect. Another important element is patience. Influence is rarely instant. It grows gradually as people witness your integrity, reliability, and thoughtful engagement over time. By being selective and intentional, you allow your contributions to settle, resonate, and make a difference. You are not seeking immediate approval or recognition. You are focused on creating outcomes that endure. Long-term impact is also about legacy. When you act with value in mind, you leave impressions that persist beyond the moment. Your words, actions, and guidance ripple through relationships, decisions, and experiences long after you have moved on. Being constantly available may make people notice you temporarily, but being valuable ensures that they remember you and carry forward what you have imparted. Finally, choosing value over availability transforms how others perceive you and how you perceive yourself. You become a person whose presence is respected, whose contributions are meaningful, and whose life is measured by depth rather than breadth. Your influence is not dependent on quantity but on quality, and the long-term effects of your intentional presence become a source of fulfillment, respect, and lasting significance. In essence, long-term impact is the natural result of living intentionally, protecting your energy, prioritizing value over availability, and consistently aligning your actions with your principles. It ensures that when you are present, you are remembered, respected, and appreciated, not merely noticed, but truly valued.